Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our gathering tonight. I am going to go ahead and get our PowerPoint going here. We are recording, by the way, I believe. Yes, there's a little thing telling me I'm recording, so we're good to go. So now I just have to remember how to do this. All right, here we go. All right, so tonight we are talking about mindfulness for mastering emotions. So we're continuing our discussion from last week about mindfulness, but I'm taking a really different approach. I'm not going to be talking about mindfulness steps per se. I'm going to be tying in everything we've talked about so far. This is our 14th gathering. I'm sure you've done many others too during this time, but this is the 14th one that I've hosted. 12 of which are recorded, 2 of which were not recorded, unfortunately. But you can find those on my YouTube channel to tap into those anytime. So I want to tie in everything that we've talked about so far to just to give you some encouragement and support in actually using those things that we've been talking about: meditation, mindfulness. We've talked about the 7 steps. We've talked about journaling and some processes around journaling. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why it's important tonight as well. So, but first I want to check in with everybody. Happy Father's Day. My dad happens to be online, so happy Father's Day, Dad. And happy birthday, Mom. Same day. But I want to check in with everybody. How are you doing? Things are continuing to open more. And just want to see what you're learning about yourself during this time. And I will go ahead and start because I know, it takes some time to think about those things, but I know what I'm learning about myself is I am way more of an introvert than I had any idea I was. I am enjoying not being around people, and it'll be interesting when this is all over and we're going back to being around people again, how that's going to be. I actually read an article, can't remember if I shared this last week, but I read an article about how being isolated like this does kind of build up a certain kind of anxiety around being around other people because of the situation that we're in. So it's understandable. So when we return and we begin to return to being around people again, that we're going to have to be aware that we'll need to overcome some of that anxiety, some of that, fear of people that has accumulated during this time, understandably so. So I've been just fine with all that's been going on here. Let me check the chat. I think I could be a hermit for at least large gaps of time, several times a year. Yes. There's an appeal to that, isn't there, sometimes? I know that not everybody is having as easy of a time with that, and that is definitely understandable. It's been wonderful having outside time, and I haven't been able to figure out if there is actually more sun this spring than usual, or if I'm just in my office all the time during the year, that I just have never noticed how much sun we have during the spring here in Chicago. So I have definitely been enjoying my outside time, and I hope that I can continue that even when I'm back in my office eventually, that I can get myself motivated and get out there. So feel free to continue to add to the chat and questions and everything as we go. So we'll go ahead and get started with our information for tonight. So we will recap mindfulness a little bit. Just as a definition, mindfulness is the practice of being aware in the present experience with acceptance. So being fully conscious, fully engaged in what we're doing, whether it's sitting and listening to music, or looking outside at nature, or listening to our breath and experiencing that breath in the moment. We're putting our whole attention to it, of that present experience, whatever we're going through in the moment, with acceptance. So being mindful to not judge what we're noticing, to not grab onto opinions about whatever it is that's happening, but just being aware and letting that experience pass through however it needs to pass through. The kind of mindfulness that I like to talk about is, I call it mindfulness with a purpose, because it's not just sitting around being blissed out or just being mindful for the sake of being mindful. Mindfulness helps us heal. It helps us be aware of ourselves, which is the only way we can heal anything, is if we're aware of what needs to be healed. So that's why tonight really kind of ties in so much of what we've been talking about the last few months, because everything that I've tried to put into our time together has to do with tools that we can use and ways we can support ourselves, and not just, sitting around, praying, or not that there's anything wrong with praying, or sitting around in like a neutral state of mind. It's all about self-awareness. It's all about, what is this showing me about myself? What is this teaching me about myself? So I'm going to just address some of the things that we've talked about. Mindfulness to calm ourselves. We've talked a lot about how to calm the mind-body system. And mindfulness is just the perspective we take when we're doing that. We're being aware of, oh my gosh, my body is filled with agitation right now. I'm filled with anxiety right now. I need to work on calming my body. Mindfulness for self-awareness is what's causing this anxiety. Kind of the body is the experience of it, and the mind is the cause, because it's coming from how we're thinking about something, how something from the outside hit us, and what's going on the inside. What story do we have that hit us, made that outer situation hit us so deeply? And then mindfulness for healing. It's going deeper of, I really want to heal this in myself, and doing that work to take that a little bit deeper too. So we're going to go through each one of these. So mindfulness to calm our self, our system, our body system. When we feel, the first thing is about being aware, right? Being aware of the emotional experience in the moment, and being able to calm our body so that we can think through what is happening. We can, our intuition is stronger when our bodies are calm and we're above the 5 on that spiritual thermometer. Our calming tools help us to stay above that 5. And not that there's anything wrong with being below the 5, because we will be below the 5. We will have emotions come up. We will have that emotional dysregulation, to put the therapy world word on it. But we can use that to teach us something about ourselves. And being able to calm our bodies helps put us in that mindset where we can, puts us above a 5, our peace of mind, our discernment, our clear think, where we can say, okay, what is this trying to show me? So the tools we've talked about are meditation, HeartMath Quick Breath or quick coherence, journaling, letting yourself write out all those feelings, and forgiveness, not just blind forgiveness, but we had 3 weeks on forgiveness, a couple weeks on forgiveness, I guess, 3 weeks on the 7 steps, and then a couple on forgiveness. So we have really covered the bases on that one. So all of these can help calm our mind-body system so that we can think more clearly. And does this mean emotions are bad? I get this a lot from people. It's not okay to feel emotion, and we don't want to. We already judge our emotions enough as it is. We don't need to judge them any further. So this is not about making our emotions the bad guy. Our emotions are signs of a healing need. Our emotions are a sign that something is dysregulated in us. There's something that is knocking us out of our equilibrium. So to be able to address that, we need our emotions too, because we really, if somebody came up to me and said, gee, Lynn, here's something that you need to look at. Maybe if I trust them, I will take that opinion, but knowing myself, most likely not. But if I feel it from the inside at an emotional level, I'm going to pay a lot more attention. And so our job in becoming more aware is to pay more attention to what's going on, because so many times we do make our emotions bad, and we don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel anger. I don't want to feel scared. I don't want to feel, I don't want to address what I'm afraid of, because then then maybe it's true. Instead of just saying, well, maybe it's not true. And if I don't address it, I won't know one way or the other. And if it is true, there's something I can do about it if I can calm myself enough to get into clear think and work my way through that. So emotions are very important for us, and they're excellent tools of self-awareness. We just want to stay stuck in them. We don't want to justify our emotions, our emotional state. We don't want to glorify our emotional state. Maybe somebody who, has a lot of emotion but doesn't do anything to get out of them. They just kind of stay in that state of mind, and that's not what emotions are for. It doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't serve any purpose for that. So we want to get the message and keep on moving. Get the message and cubby on, and that is for the moment of silence for our baseball season this year. Okay, thank you. And we are moving right along. We are responsible for our own emotions. We are responsible for our internal reactions and how that internal reactions end up showing up in the world. So when I get angry, and not that I'm perfect about this, believe me, I have many people in my life who will tell you I'm not, but when I get angry about something, then I'm responsible for working through that anger and not putting it on to somebody else. There's a therapist that I listened to a webinar of his, David Schnarek, one time, and he was making a joke. He's a couples therapist, and so he was making a joke about, people who say, well, I'm entitled to have my feelings. I'm entitled to my feelings. And his response is, yes, you are. You certainly are entitled to your feelings, and please keep them to yourself, because you're making a mess of the relationship, or you're making a mess of whatever the situation is. So just because we're entitled to our feelings, just because we're human and we have emotions, doesn't mean that we have a right to throw them up onto somebody else or some other situation. And as we're paying attention to our emotions, and when we're working with them and using them to heal or work through something within ourselves, we can also then see the times when we don't do that more clearly. And when we don't do that, how that emotional state of mind muddies up the waters and gets in the way of being able to make the best decision, or being able to work to a solution that is going to be more supportive than the one that we can see when we're in that emotional state of mind. So emotions aren't bad. They are very important tools for us. So mindfulness for self-awareness. So good old Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, that unconscious will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So he's talking about what is going on under the surface. How can we be more aware of what's happening, in our unconscious mind? And how we know that is through our emotions. Something happens in the outer world, it hits us a certain way, and what it's hitting is that unresolved experience, or could be a lot of things, an unresolved experience, mostly thought forms, belief systems, that kind of thing, that is out of sync with what's happening in the world, or what's happening in our mind. Something's out of alignment. So in Jane Elizabeth's book, Spiritual Power Tools, Support for Your Soul, she has this image of the iceberg, that you probably all have seen that iceberg. And she's teaching about that unconscious mind. My consciousness is like the iceberg. I'm 1/10 conscious. What I know about myself, I know, and I'm 9/10 subconscious. Everything else, all that emotional, all that history is in our unconscious selves, and if we want to think about this from a neuroscience perspective, that that, the conscious, but, that whole self, that one-time conscious and unconscious is all neural networks. It's all nervous system wiring that some of it is working, much of it is working, and much of it is not. So when we get triggered, it's reality is banging up against something in our storage that is out of alignment with what's true. And those emotions lead us within toward that discovery. What's going on with me? What's going on in this inside? What is this situation reminding me? What is this person reminding me of? How can I look at what's happening inside of me that's causing this agitation? So in life, we have opportunities all the time to discover ourselves. It just may not feel awesome to see that we're holding something that really isn't working for us. But if we don't see it, we can't do anything about it. So yeah, it's hard to, I shared the story of going to the Badlands when I was in high school with my family, and, running up the hills and everything, and falling down and skinning my knee, and, going back to the camper where my parents were and crying, my mom was, and crying to my mom, and my knee was all skinned up, and she helped me clean it up. And then I'm like, I am not letting that slow me down. I'm going to go back there and I'm going to conquer that. And I remember the feeling when that happened, and it was just so like, oh no, you don't. You are not going to hold this over me, Badlands, and so even though that hurt to skin my knee, what I discovered about myself is a powerful drive that I don't think even then, I was only like 14 or something, but I didn't know I had that in me, but I remembered it. It made a huge impact on what I knew about myself. It made that unconscious part of me, that drive and that courage and that power and strength and perseverance, known to me. I was just a 14-year-old girl. What did I know? But I never forgot that experience. And I would pull on that part of me when I needed to. I'd be, come on, this is a Badlands moment. We got to do this. So there was another experience that I had this week that I thought was important to share with you all. And it's a little risky for me to share this because I know there's so many feelings about this out right now, but I want to share with you my experience, not actually for the even social issue around this, but for this self-awareness piece around this. So that's my disclaimer. So, take this, for the experience of it, not even necessarily the content, although the content would not hurt to look at also, editor's note. So I was listening to an interview this week. I think it was on Monday, by an author and sociologist, Robin DiAngelo, and she wrote a book called White Fragility. Robin DiAngelo is a white woman who writes about why white people get so defensive when talking about race. And I have not fully read the book yet, so I really can't tell you much more than that. But the interview for me was so very powerful. Last week I mentioned that I've had a hard couple of weeks before that with all that was going on in the world, and and there was a time during those 2 weeks where I'm just like, this just looks hopeless to me as how are people going to change? How are people going to be fair and kind to each other? And then, I cannot even explain the level of upset that it was for me, and how, me trying to hold this. And usually I'm very easily able to hold the higher picture and hold that space of, this is all happening for a reason. Let's learn what we need to learn. But this, for some, the whole 2 weeks with George Floyd's death and Amy Cooper's behavior, and the other things that were going on also really, really hit me. And there was, I got a lot out of the interview, and I will include this when I send out the recording, because we are recording tonight, yay. I'll include that link that's on the screen right now. But one thing she said, one of the many things she said that just completely made this huge shift in me, but this was the best, not the best one, but the biggest shift was, she said, the question isn't, and she was talking about herself, she said, the question isn't if I'm racist, it's how I'm racist. And she was talking about how I am a white woman. I have been raised as a white woman. I have no idea what people of color have gone through. I have no idea. So just because of that foundation, and the privilege, the foundation, the inherent power that has been deemed on me as a white person, my actions and thoughts and worldview are inherently racist. It might not be racist like, like somebody who goes out and lynches people, but it's that subtle, unconscious racism that is just there. And when she said that, there's something that shifted in me, and it gave me permission to look at about 5 other layers that opened up for me about how hard I work and try to make sure nobody thinks I'm racist in those situations, that how, all of the different behaviors of, and there's so much guilt and shame and people pleasing and all sorts of things came to the surface. And what that shifted for me was permission to look at it within myself first. That was huge. And then I can do something about it, right? If I'm trying to hide the fact that I've got all this white privilege going on and I feel ashamed of it, but I like it, but I know it's not fair and I don't know what to do about it and all of these other things, I can't do anything about it if I have no idea that's going on. If it's tucked away in that iceberg, but even though I can feel it because I'm working awfully hard to keep it down in that iceberg, so I don't have to think about it and nobody's going to call me out on it, but some part of me feels that. So she just said that line in the interview and it just came up and it's like, oh, wow, there it is. And she said it so matter-of-factly, it's like, oh, this is okay. Now, am I going to go around calling myself racist? Probably not, because that's such a charged word. But I know, and I can look at it, and it's easier for me if I approach someone of color who has an extremely different experience of the world than I do, then if I can just keep that in mind, I can listen differently. I can ask, how am I showing up for this person in their mind? How am I showing up in my mind? How can I just listen to what their need is without this other busyness going on inside of me trying to make sure I don't look racist to them? I can just let that all go. I never would have known that if I had not listened to that interview and let that piece of unconsciousness come up to the surface. And it's been so healing. And the whole distress that I had been under for 2 weeks before that, and I say 2 weeks, not just because nothing was there before, but just because of all the turmoil in our world and my reaction to it, and some personal one-on-one experiences of people too that were very, very hard for me. It just made me go, oh, okay, well, I don't have to heal everybody, and I don't have to hate them for being hateful. In one of our times together, I shared that I realized in college that I'm bigoted against bigoted people. And so this was kind of full circle of that, of like, okay, so my hate isn't healing any hate. And if I can just, now that I see what I need to do within myself, why don't I just do that and let everybody else deal with their own stuff? I'm not responsible for anybody else's stuff. I'm responsible for me. And that just made this whole cloud that had been over my head, my eyes, just lift. And it's like, okay, I get it. So this is great. It's all about me. I am responsible for me, and I have to be aware. And George Floyd's death and Amy Cooper's behavior brought to the surface the opportunity for me, for all of us, to examine our unconscious assumptions about how we see others, how we see ourselves, and our idea of the world, and how we define that world for other people, of what should be or shouldn't be, or, blah, all of this. And I'm so happy that the conversation is continuing more than usual. And I'm so happy that at least it's continuing in me. And it's wonderful. I feel it's so freeing to be able to see that, hey, I'm at square one, but dang, at least I know I'm in the game. I didn't even think I was in the game before, but now I'm in the game. I can do something. I can roll the dice and find out and learn and keep going. So some of the tools for self-awareness that we've talked about, journaling. The questions listed under journaling on the screen are from Jane Elizabeth's Spiritual Power Tools book, under the Spiritual Power Tool of Journaling. Just some questions to get us started. What emotions are you feeling? When something triggers you or something's bothering you, what emotions are you feeling? Who or what pushed your buttons? Does this always happen to you? Is this a pattern in your life? What is your soul trying to tell you? Let yourself tap into that inherent intuition that you have. Maybe if I had done that differently, I would have been able to see that iceberg piece more clearly. But, hey, I'll take whatever I need. If you were guided by your soul rather than being run by your ego, how would you handle things differently? I love that question. That's the one I usually jump to sometimes, because I can be pretty frustrated with my own emotions. So I'll just go, okay, if I were not feeling this emotional right now, how would I see things? And it just helps. It helps shift things. It helps take me out of that emotional space and be able to see the bigger picture. And I'm sharing these again too, and I've shared them in the first place because we always need these tools. There will likely be no time in our lives where we won't need to be learning and growing and processing something, because we're human and we have a pulse. And if we have a pulse, we have something if we're still here on this planet, we still have work to do. So why not cooperate with the work instead of denying that it's there or needs to be there? So the agitated energy process is another tool that I've shared. And what is the agitation emotion I'm feeling? Again, when we get triggered, I call this my quickie tool, because it's just real quick, 1, 2, 3. What's the emotion I'm feeling? I can feel it in my body. What is that emotion? And then we name the emotion, name it to tame it. And then the second question, what is the story the emotion is telling? Oh gosh, I feel really bad when, I don't know, such and such happens, and I think it means that they don't like me. Oh, okay, thank you for sharing. That's good information. So then the third question, what is the new perspective I can take that will calm me? What new perspective would feel calming and also more real? It's not just let's make up a new perspective and take it on, because only the perspective that's real is going to be calming. Things that are false are agitating, so again, we can see that in the world too. When people are holding on to false ideas, it's agitating. And, when it has to do with anger or hatred or being against another human being, it's agitating. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. If it's agitating, then something's out of alignment. When we're in alignment, we feel calmer, because it's that truth with a capital T that flows through us that is nourishing, and we're wired to be compassionate. We're wired to be above a 5, if you will. So that's always a good guide. How do I know it's true? Well, is it agitating? If it's agitating, look deeper. Keep going with that exploration of the inside. And if it's not agitating, then hey, try it out. Go for it. See what happens. It is partially we are in a trial and error human situation, right? But we learn from our errors too, and that's the main thing. And then mindfulness meditation, watching your thoughts, feeling your feelings without trying to stop or avoid them, and just letting them be without judgment, just letting them come up, because how are you going to know what your head is saying all the time if you're not listening to it? And that's one of the top 3 or 5 reasons that I hear from people as to why they stop meditating. Well, I don't like what's going on in my head. Well, okay, well, that's good information. Why don't you do something about it? Why don't you keep listening and find out what are the patterns? What are the repetitive thoughts? And, then you can go, oh yeah, there's that repetitive thought. Oh my God, that one goes through my mind all the time. I'm bored. I need a new thought. And that's how we begin to slowly but surely shift those thought patterns within us. And then mindfulness for healing. It's just kind of something I made up, to just talking about going deeper. So we've got the body calming, we've got the mind exploration, and then taking mindfulness and using that ability to observe what's going on inside of us with compassion, to take it to the next level, to take it more deeply. Because our healing process is more than meditating. It's more than being blissed out or peace of mind no matter what. It's about learning. It's about self-discovery and discovering the wonderful things about yourself. Like I was able to discover my courage and my perseverance and my strength and my fire. But it's also about discovering, oh my gosh, I've got this whole other thing going on because of my skin color in this lifetime, and the power that has bestowed upon me just for being born into it, that isn't that into a worldview that's out of whack with compassion for humanity, But how do I know? That's not so great to look at about myself, but oh my gosh, it's better than being blind to it. It's better than continuing to act that out. So go deep, and find out who you are, find out who you're not. And in both revelations of who you are and who you're not, you learn something about yourself, and you get to be more empowered in that beautiful self that you are. And you get to release and let go and discard all those false beliefs and those things that you find out that you're holding about yourself or the world that aren't true. Get them out of there. So tools for healing that we've talked about: meditation, always meditation, holding thoughts without judgment, but with discernment and curiosity. That's how we're learning about ourselves. So meditation, yeah, it's great to still your mind. And that's wonderful because you get, when your mind is quiet in meditation, that's when big energy shifts are going on, and you're absorbing, you're lifting you're absorbing energy of the universe, if you will, and you're lifting your vibration. You're lifting from below the 5 on that spiritual thermometer, lifting yourself up into that higher place in mind. And so it's great when our meditations are quiet, but even when they're not, that's still happening. And B, even when your mind isn't quiet, then just watch your thoughts and learn about them and what's happening in your thoughts that's working, what's happening in your thoughts that aren't working. You can practice steering your thoughts from the little bubbles of everyday thoughts that go on to your focusing on your breath, focusing on a candle flame, focusing on music, whatever resonates with you the most. And that teaches you to be in charge of your thoughts instead of your thoughts being in charge of you, or you being in charge of your emotions, being able to observe them, rather than your emotions being in charge of you and taking you where they always take you when you're unconscious of them. So some of the tools that we've talked about are meditation, of course, and the 7 steps for successful life transitions is a great journaling process. And there's lots of information that I've shared about that. And I have one more story about that I'd like to share tonight in a little bit. You can always ask, how is this situation that's happening on the outer reflecting something on the inside that I need to see? Again, if it's agitating, there's a healing need there. And not, it doesn't mean disagreement. It doesn't mean we see something in the world and we disagree with it. That's different. It's when it ruins our day, right? When it takes us down for an hour or 2 or 2 weeks, you know, that's when there's a real healing need there, and it's worth exploring. It's worth asking, okay, what is this trying to show me? Simple question. Simple question. You know, a lot of people come into me for the first time and they are really afraid. And thank goodness they say it so I can help assure them that that's not the case. But, you know, they're so scared that they're going to find out that they're not okay sometimes. You know, those negative thoughts can be so convincing that, wow, if I really look at those negative thoughts, what if I find out it's true? What if I find out I'm really not okay? And that is never the case, any more than it is the case when we deem somebody else not okay or less than. It's never true. It's never true. How can that be true? That doesn't even make any sense on any level, any rational level. And it's not true about ourselves, that we are not okay in any way, shape, or form. Are there things that we need to change about ourselves? Sure. But the only way you can do that is to look and see and to kind of weed out, okay, here's a behavior that I have, didn't even know I had. Let's look at it. Let's lay it out on the table and see what we can do to shift it. How do I need to hold it differently? How do I need to change my behavior, but from that inner intention rather than just behaviorally on the outside, but from the inside out? So, little question, big answers. How is this situation trying to reflect something from my inside? There's good old Carl Jung again. Happy Father's Day, Carl Jung. Again, so why do we bother? Why do we bother doing this exploration? And because until we make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life, and you will call it fate, instead of taking charge of it and cooperating with what your life really can be. And if you want to call that fate, that's fine. But, you know, we have choices all the time. We have free will, and our free will can take us in places that make our lives better, and our free will can make us take choices and avenues that make our lives more difficult. And why would we, if we can be more conscious and choose what makes our lives better, why wouldn't we do that? But we don't do that because sometimes we're not willing to look at the things we need to look at because we don't want to feel what we need to feel in order to look at them. So, you know, so that's a choice, right? That's a choice. Life will always have its ups and downs, and our ups don't make life better. Our ups don't mean that we're doing life right finally, and our downs don't mean that we're doing life wrong. It's just information. Hey, this is working out well. Great. I did my work and this is smooth, but I know something else will come up that I need to keep examining. I can't fall asleep to my own unconscious. You know, I always have to be looking for those signs so I can be on top of the next thing that comes up. Yeah, this thing may be easy, but the next thing may be hard, and I need to be awake. I need to be awake for it. Every person and situation is here to help us be stronger and to know more about ourselves. And that is always true. And all these tools that we've talked about, when we use them, not just knowing them, but actually putting them into action, help us be aware and move through any situation with dignity and grace. All right. Any questions? Doesn't look like it right now. All right, so I have a story about my dad. Since it's Father's Day, I am going to soak that for all it's worth tonight. So, and he gave me permission to share the story. So just in case you were wondering. So a few years ago, I think it was 2015, my dad had been, probably for over a year, I would think, and still correct me if I'm wrong, but had been having issues swallowing and just having some issues with his throat. And he would go in and have a procedure done that kind of helped widen things so he could swallow and chew and eat and everything more easily, and had to go in every now and then to have that done. And then one time when he went in, the doctor found cancer in his throat. Nobody wants to hear that, especially about their parents, right? Nobody wants to hear that. And, so of course it shook up our whole family, and we're all concerned. And the doctor wanted him to get him in pretty quickly for surgery to have it removed, because, it's needing to be removed sooner than later. And so my family, my husband at the time and my kids had a vacation planned around the same time as my dad's surgery was going to be. And the surgery got changed and everything, but that's kind of how it ended up. So my kids and their dad went to California on vacation, and I went, kind of coordinated with my brother who lives near there, and I went after surgery. And so before surgery, before like backtracking, like right after we found out, knowing that I would go and do whatever I could to help, there was a part of me that was afraid, of course, that he was going to die, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for that. I am so not ready for that. And what can I do? Oh my gosh, who can I pray to? Who can I call? How many people praying for my dad is it going to take to make him live, and and all of this. And I heard this voice: it is none of your business what your dad does. I'm like, okay, I guess that is true. That is a true statement. It is none of my business. This is between my dad and his soul, and which are one and the same, and I don't get a vote. Well, that was rational and valid, but it didn't help me feel any better. So I knew, okay, I need to take my dad up the 7 steps. So I journaled and journaled and journaled. I went through that whole 7 steps, and I kind of felt better. So I went with that a little bit, and, and then it came closer to going there and, not knowing, like my time to go there was going to be, I think, a week after my dad had surgery, because my brother was there. So we were going to kind of take turns taking off work. So as it came closer to the time, I didn't know what it was going to be like. Was I going to have to change tubes? Was my dad going to be in the hospital for months? What was going to go on? I had no idea. And so I just found myself going, okay, I was watching on the inside and just watching my own emotions come up and down. And, 1 minute I'm crying, the next minute I'm strong. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work. I can't be all over the place, because that's not going to help my mom. That's not going to help my dad. I can't go there and be an emotional roller coaster, because that's not going to help anybody. So I took my dad up the 7 steps again, like just releasing him and releasing him and releasing him, until I was at the point where my self wasn't disturbed by whether or not my dad stayed or chose to leave at a soul level. That wasn't my vote, and it was okay. I felt at peace either way, but I did have a preference, but I wasn't attached to my preference. So when I went there, I was able to, my mom and my brother caught, I don't know if it was like bronchitis or pneumonia or something, so they couldn't even be in the hospital. So I show up in the airplane. My brother drops me off to go see my dad. My brother realizes he's sick and needs to stay home. My mom wasn't feeling good, so she had to stay home. So I didn't have my suitcase, and I stayed with my dad for 3 days And I was just able to be there with him, for him. He was awake. You know, he did not have as many tubes, and he did earlier. I didn't see that part, but you know, by the time I got there, he was walking around, you know, doing laps around the station, and we just had a great time talking together and watching TV together. And you know, you don't realize how many food commercials are on TV until you're sitting with somebody who can't eat. And it's like, oh my gosh, every other commercial is a food commercial. But we laughed, we had fun, and you know, then I was with them for a couple of weeks. So, you know, I was able to be there when he went home from the hospital, and then stay and help out with his pill routine, and he had a feeding tube for a while, and so it's able to help out that and get into that routine. And you know, and I was just able to be present and helpful, and not once, because I did my work, not once did I get lost in emotion around it, except for being glad to be there. And I wasn't even lost in that. I was just there. I was just in that. And you know, and it's so made it worth doing my work, even in a tough situation like that, even, you know, even especially when, not even when, but especially when something like that is out of my control, it's out of my hands, then I'm just made peace with whatever could be, one way or the other. And I just want to be there. I just want to show up and do my part. And it's so worth it. It is so worth it. So I wanted to share that because it's a really important 7-step story, and why it's worth doing the work. It wasn't easy. I mean, it probably took me each time a couple of weeks to work through those steps. And again, I had to do it twice. It wasn't just once. It was twice I had to do it. So just as an example of doing that work. So this is a little chart that I will make sure gets into our recording as well. I made this for a class a few years ago. So this is just to check off how you can support yourself every day in mastering your emotions, being in charge of you and learning from them. So you can use this and print this out as many times as you need to for every week, 52 times, right? For the next year starting today. You know, did you meditate today? Even 5 minutes is going to make a huge difference to your day. Did you need to use the agitated energy process? Usually with the agitated energy process, I recommend that for something that is just quick and, you know, maybe it's something very easy that we can go, okay, what's this agitation? What is the story that is this emotion is telling me, and what's a new assumption? That's where we can do something very quickly. Journaling actually should be up here also on this chart. You know, journaling is like when, okay, I can't just like flick it off in 3 questions. So I need to do a little bit more understanding, a little bit more observing. And if I write out what I'm thinking, then I can look at it and examine it more. So journaling should definitely be on there. Am I checking in with myself on the spiritual thermometer? When I'm at a 2, am I letting myself stay at a 2, or am I using that to go, okay, what's going on with me? Why am I here? Why am I in this space? Let's do what we need to do to move that up. Being the observer self, that is mindfulness. Being able to observe what's going on without overjudging it, without judging it all, but that's hard to do sometimes, but without overjudging it or getting lost in it. Just watching and seeing. It's like, okay, what does this mean for me? What do I need to do? That mindfulness breath, we can pull on that quick breath anytime and help it to calm the body so that we can then solve the issue, whether it's on the inside or the outside. That calmness will help us see better. And then looking more concretely as, what's going on with me? Is this a fact? Is it a judgment? Is it emotion? What's what? What is what? You know, is it emotion that that involves facts? Is it emotion that involves judgments? You know, like what is that? And if we can delineate what those things are, somebody's walking across the front. If we can delineate what those are, then they're easier to, oh God, that's enough. Then we can figure out what our next step is. Do I need to journal more? Do I need to forgive? Do I need to just do the agitated energy process and let it go? All right. Okay, we got it. We got it. Sorry, I didn't do that on purpose. I am not hurting my dog. Okay. Although it's very tempting sometimes. So anyway, so this is just kind of a chart to, I was joking, by the way, just in case, don't walk away with that. So this just helps us to kind of keep track and get into the habit more. You know, let me chart this for a while so I get into the habit of using these tools more often, and because we want them to be a habit, because we'll always need them. We will always be able to use meditation. We will always be able to use the agitated energy process. We will always be able to do the 7 steps with something. There will always be something that we can use to do that. All right. Scamps needs to do the agitated energy process. That's funny. Yes, my dog is Scamps, and yes, he could use that sometimes. So, all right. So I think that brings us to our meditation time. I will mute myself if I need to. Oh, I'm barking at this time, bud. All right, so just kind of, that's a lot of information. I just wanted to recap everything. You know, as I'm looking at other of our gatherings and our time together, thinking like, what can I share? And there's always tools, there's always things to talk about as far as, you know, why this is important or why it's helpful. But so much what I've shared already are all the things that I use myself personally. They're all the things that I use as a therapist in my practice. And, you know, I just would rather encourage you just to use those. You know, use those tools and turn within and pay attention to what's going on the inside, because it's valuable information. Everything that is happening inside and outside is valuable information, because it's all about being more awake. It's all about, you know, clearing out what we need to clear out so that we can be at a 7 on the spiritual thermometer more. And that's clarity, and that gives us more intuitive capacity. It gives us more clarity of rational thought. It helps us make better decisions, and it just feels a heck of a lot better when we are cooperating with our process. So let's kind of just let go of all of that information right now, because it's there and it's recorded, and I will send it out. And let's start with our quick breath. Breathing in to the count of 4. Breathing out to the count of 4. And just gently make sure your breath is coming through the belly, the diaphragm, rather than the lungs and the chest. Feel your belly expand as you breathe in. And feel your belly pull back when you breathe out. You don't even have to do it on purpose, just watch it happening. Breathing in to the count of 4. Breathing out to the count of 4. When you feel your breath is in a rhythm that takes less thought, it feels more natural. Let your attention be on the tip of your heart. If it helps to put your hand on your heart, or I like to use the tip of my finger to put it right where that tip of my physical heart would be. And continue that breath with your attention at your heart. And if your mind wanders, it's okay, just bring it back. So that facing your heart to your breath. There is that center point within us all that knows that great peace that we all long for. That peace that is inherent within us. That is what we strive for. And we can tap into that anytime. That is a part of us that never leaves, even if we lose sight of it. It's still there. And when we do leave that awareness, it's only to learn something so that we can have more of that awareness. To see it, to work with it, to heal it, to release it. It's that part of us, that peaceful, aligned, free part of us that exists when the iceberg is gone. When all the pieces have melted away through our awareness and cooperation. It's that pure energy, pure consciousness, if you will, that flows through us. Feel that peace in every cell of your body. Feel that peace in the soothing air around you. And this peace that you feel right now, or at other times that you felt it, is how you know when you're below a 5. It's by this comparison. So feel that. Recognize it as your own. It completely belongs to you. And feel your breath again. Breath coming in slowly. And the out breath leaving slowly. And feel your feet on the floor, your body and your chair. And just see this image too of gathering all those tools that we've talked about, all those different ways you can grab onto to support yourself experiencing more peace. But so often, in order to have more peace, we have to make room for it. And that's the work, that's the processing, that's the releasing, forgiving, letting go. Shifting perspective, seeing the bigger picture. Like a piece of the iceberg coming off has more room for the ocean. So too, as we heal those pieces within that need healing, there's more room for that peace. And feel yourself in your room, your surroundings, the people or pets around you, or belongings, the energy of your space. Feel that more consciously. Take a deep breath. Maybe 2 or 3 if you need to, just to shift. Shift gears from that introspection to being present in your world on the inside and out. And when you're ready, open your eyes, no hurry. I invite you to take advantage this week of that chart. It can help you practice incorporating these tools more into your everyday life. Maybe there's a day here and there you don't need them at all, except for meditation. And that's great too. But they're worth it. So thank you everybody for coming tonight, hanging out with me, and the recording will be posted. Happy Father's Day, Dad. Happy birthday, Mom. Love you guys. And love to all of you. And I will see you next time. Take care.